Hi there, we're back to Binance Coin today, and then later we have Dogecoin, Cardano and Tron. So it's pretty green for Binance Coin last week, and let's quickly look at what the current chart is telling us and see where BNB is like potentially getting to. So here is the weekly chart, that's where we usually start, and among the bunch of red today, Binance Coin and Solana and probably Tron is still like still green at the current state. And then so looking at this here, we see this bounce when Binance Coin tested this pink line at around 610 or even close to 600. Okay, so that was the backdrop at the beginning of last week. So now, fast forward, we are starting a new week. Basically, the Wyckoff big picture is still more or less the same. So here it's the upwards of the distribution. So let me pull it over here. So after that, we understand there are multiple LPSYs to test the remaining demand, so seeing whether there's still any interest in the market. And according to the Wyckoff method, eventually when people lost interest in crypto, maybe they moved their money to some other assets. They see bigger potentials there, or they see, so it's usually two things, right? So either bigger potential of gains or bigger protection in terms of turbulent times. So that's if Wyckoff's method holds true for current state of Binance Coin, then we'll see it continue to lose steam and test this pink line again, eventually coming down to test the subsequent supports. So I've already mentioned this pink line around 610 or somewhere between 600 to 610 is the first support. The second is the purple over here around 560. And in terms of resistance, so obviously this one drawing from the upthrust around 670 is the first one. And eventually skipping the middle ones, there may be multiple rounds of like testing and testing before it can retest this 740 level that's from the upthrust of the distribution. So these are the supports and resistance levels when the price continues to seek where the market is trying to push it to. So in terms of daily, we see the price has basically gone outside of this downward trend a little. So this is very tricky. So usually during the transition, we see certain things like similar to a breakout, but be very careful, that may not be the case. We have to continuously adjust the chart, much like we adjust our stop loss, right? So that's the thing. So because we have only, if I change it to a line chart, it's clearer. We have only 1 point, 2 points, 3 points over here. Obviously there's a fourth one. So the tricky part is initially when we draw this light blue box, according to the wicks and bodies of the candles, including the point over here, this hasn't developed yet. So when these happen, what we can do is to adjust this according to the current state. So initially it was a bit narrow and a bit to the downside. The slope seems to be less steep at the moment. So there is a chance that it still hasn't fallen outside the downward trend. The confirmation would come when it goes high to a point where if I move the box and it touches all these lower points and it couldn't bracket this price surge, then it's the time we can confirm or like be more confident that it has fallen outside this downward trend, this for like the pale blue box. That's one point. The other point is we talked about this blue line over here. That was supposed to be the support line back in April, May time, and also over here in early June. So this, once the price has fallen below this support line, now becomes the resistance line, and we see over the past 7 days that the price has been trying to reach or breach or break out from this support line, resistance line over here. So looking at the volume here, it seems it's got relatively good support, and there seems to be quite a bit of demand trying to push the price up. Eventually, whether this can happen or how far it can go, it depends on the thing I said, like whether it can break outside of this downward trend, because we already talked about from a macro perspective. Yes, it can retest this level. If that happens, obviously from a daily chart perspective, the price can continue to go up and, well, basically test this level first before it can test the subsequent resistance levels. However, if it doesn't, if it fails, and then comes back down to test this pink support line at around 610 we already talked about, then one interesting thing is, if this scenario happens, then here near the mid-August, well, it doesn't have to go all the way to that point, but somewhere around here you see this triangle, right? The price is being squeezed, so it has to do a breakout, either breaking the pink line going down or breaking this blue line over here, this pale blue line over here, seeking for a higher point. So we're not far from that. It's only about 4 to 6 weeks away, given if it doesn't break out sooner. So that's the thing we have to keep observing. While if you have entered at this point, you keep adjusting your stop loss, pushing it up, then hopefully you gain more, maximizing your profit. If it does come down, you can, like, the stop loss help you take your profit, and eventually we look at whether it's going to break the pink and then test this blue bottom line of the box. So that's where Binance Coin is. So I have received also some questions about whether I can do Wyckoff at a lower timeline. I usually show it on the weekly, right? So reason being, my take is it's more applicable towards like a higher level timeline. Not that we can't try to do it at a lower level, but then it will be very noisy because of the frequent price actions. So let's say, just to give it a quick example, over here. So within this, we know this distribution pattern since March last year, right, for Binance Coin. And then if we go to the daily, March last year is all the way like back to here. So we're going to skip that part for now. We just look at what we have here. So let's say if we have like a selling climax at this point, just for saying sake, then we have another buying climax, and then eventually die down to another point. And interestingly, if you try to build it that way, you have to look at it very carefully because of all these wicks and lines and candles. If we change it to a line chart, then maybe it helps a little. So we can say there is, within this over here, this peak comes down to an accumulation period, and these were the selling climax, the second test, another test, and this is the backup and last point of support period, and then eventually there's a preliminary supply and a buying climax, and you know all the subsequent tests plus the sign of weakness, and then an LPSY and a selling climax, then automatic rally, another test, sign of strength, and boom, another preliminary supply and buying climax. So we can look at it that way, but you see how wicked the chart is, right? It's very noisy compared to the weekly chart. So within the bigger picture, there can be a smaller one. So we just talked about that was the buying climax, and this is the upthrust of the distribution. So between the buying climax on the weekly chart and the upthrust of the distribution, there seems to be some kind of accumulation pattern happening over here. If we want to apply the same terminology from Wyckoff method, that's totally fine. Similarly, over here, with a bunch of like we call the upthrust of the distribution that phase of buying climax, and then a bunch of second tests and sign of weakness, and eventually there was a selling climax, automatic rally, and come down for another test, and sign of strength, more test, or even like almost a spring close to, and then back up, last point of supply, eventually a new buying climax. But this time the buying climax is lower than the one before. So that may be a signal telling us, okay, maybe people's demand isn't as high as when it was during the upthrust of the distribution. So if this daily chart Wyckoff holds true, then obviously you may say, so if this is the daily chart's buying climax, so where we are now, then let's say we are this is a sign of weakness over here, and we have the LPSY, obviously the next sign of weakness. So it's basically, let's use this is clear. So let's say this is a new or daily chart buying climax. Let's put it here. I just wanted to make sure it's not showing. Yeah, it's showing on the other time intervals. Just this interval. Let's say if we have the buying climax here, we have this automatic reaction, and then the second test, a sign of weakness over here, and now we are heading to some more tests, or LPSY, depending on how you want to name it. To me, they're all tests. That's it, to simplify things, right? So let's keep these daily chart Wyckoff tags over here and observe whether the price would eventually come down to start another accumulation cycle in terms of daily. So long story today,